Welcome to Beatsource Tech. My name's Mojaxx, and today we are looking at some products which are not especially glamorous, but which are essential for all kinds of DJ. We're looking at the updated range of Chroma cables from TechTools. Chroma cables have been around for almost a decade now, having first launched with regular USB versions back in 2014. 4 years later, I reviewed their expanded range when they released USB-C to B cables and a bunch of audio options with various combinations of RCA and jack plugs. Nearly 5 years later, I'm still using that batch from 2018. A load of them have lived in the lab, being used for videos and live streams, and the rest have been a permanent fixture in my DJ bag, being used at every gig. And I'm happy to report that, in that time, not a single one has given me any issues whatsoever. Which is, the whole point. I always like to remind you when I'm talking about cables, especially premium ones, that I hold no truck with companies who claim their cables have some magical quality that will make your music sound better. I'm sure that audiophiles perhaps have some valid arguments to make when it comes to using fancy analog cables on really high-end hi-fi equipment, but that's not really relevant to DJ life using typical DJ gear. No, what matters to me are two things: durability and performance. Will they last a long time and do the job they're intended to do? When it comes to the Chroma cables, those two things are definitely covered. The designs are always created with DJs in mind. Bright colours to help identify which cable is which, good shielding, and ferrite chokes on the USBs to prevent interference. The rubber coating means they're easy to coil and don't readily tangle, and each one comes with a colour-matched Velcro cable strap. On the audio cables, the strain relief is movable, so although they come fully paired, you can split them as far as you like. Plus, the connectors are all gold-plated, so they resist corrosion. None of mine are even starting to look tired. And whilst this isn't actually important, they do look great, being available in white, black, blue, green, red, and neon orange, some even glowing under UV light. So why am I talking about them again today? Well, as great as the original audio cables were, there were a few things that could have potentially made them even better. And now TechTools have released a 2.0 version of the RCA to RCA cable, which has changed all of those things. Firstly, the length has been increased by 33%, going from 1.5 to 2 meters. The originals were long enough for my needs most of the time, but not always, so that's very welcome. Secondly, my biggest quality of life issues with the original cables was that both plugs on each were the same colour. The only way to discern which plug was which was by looking at a small marker on the strain relief. Not easy in daylight with brighter coloured cables, let alone in a dark booth. I used to wrap a bit of electrical tape around one side as a workaround, but that wasn't ideal. Now with version 2, each cable has one plug in the colour of the cable and one in white, or black on the white cable. A simple change, but a big one for me. And finally, the plugs on the old version were a little chunky. It wasn't a problem with most hardware, but on some devices, a lot of Native Instruments gear, phase boxes, etc., it meant that the connection wasn't always quite as secure as it could have been. With the new ones, although they're still roughly the same size, the circumference near the plug has been reduced, so those concerns are gone. They've provided a solid connection on everything I've plugged them into. The price has increased a minimal amount over the originals at $24 versus $21, but that's worth it for the extra length alone. A really solid upgrade, and I'm hoping they also do 2.0 versions of the jack cables too, plus I'd really like to see XLRs from them one day. In their USB line, TechTools have expanded their offerings with a new USB-C to USB-C cable. It's still fairly rare to see USB-C ports on the back of DJ and production hardware, but they are slowly beginning to pop up, with the DDJ Flex 4 and DJM S5 from Pioneer DJ being the most notable devices to feature them in 2022. Here's what's interesting about the USB-C to C cable: it's shorter than their other USBs at 1 meter as opposed to 1.5 meter. There's a good reason for that though, and it's about the compromises which the USB-C 3.2 Gen 2 standards impose. The C2C cable is rated for 100 watt power delivery, which means it powers and charges my 16-inch MacBook Pro just fine, but it's also rated for 10 gigabits per second transfer speed. And to be sure a cable can achieve that speed, it can only be a maximum of 1 meter long. Any longer and you start to see drop-offs in transfer speed. So that perhaps makes the USB-C to USB-C cable a slightly niche product at this point. It definitely performs as promised, maxing out the speed of my Crucial X8 external drive at around 950 megabytes per second and charging my 100 watt laptop. But I suspect that for most DJs like myself, the main use of a C2C cable in the booth right now is just for laptop charging, and the 1 meter length is a touch inconvenient for that. so perhaps this one is more a product for the future, but you may well have a use for it today for, say, an external SSD, and if you do, well, everything about it is just as high quality as the rest of the range, and at $14 it's not even particularly expensive. Most quality USB-C Gen 2 cables are around the same price, so it's another easy recommend for me. So there you go, my thoughts on the new additions to the Chroma Cables line from DJ TechTools. I've been a massive fan of this whole range since day one, because I find them to be reliable and durable. You know, I trust them not to let me down in the booth, and when you're buying cables, especially premium ones, that's really the main thing. It's the most important thing, is are they going to last over a long period? And I've never had a Chroma cable let me down yet. So, as always, a thorough recommend from me. In the comments this week, I'd love to hear from you about the unsung heroes in your DJ or production setup. The stuff that isn't glamorous, like your favourite USB sticks you've been using for years, your slip mats maybe, your head shells, your cables, your adapters, your SD cards, maybe your laptop stand that you've been wedded to for literally years. Tell us about the stuff that isn't glamorous but really makes your DJ life a whole lot better. Thank you for watching this episode of Beatsource Tech. I do hope you've enjoyed it or found it useful. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any future videos. I'll see you next time.